All right, and we're back. The intros are in place. The finalists are there at their tables ready to get their match started. With us right now is Chris Shepard from the Pokemon Company. He's going to give us the proper expert commentary as we jump into the finals of TCG.
Thanks for having me. This should be a good one.
So, if I get this right, we've got Igor Costa, who is the Portugal's national champion 4 years running.
That's correct. That's how he's qualified every year. This is 4th straight Worlds.
So that seems like he might be the favorite for this match.
It's hard to say. They have very similar decks, and Harrison's played really well so far, so I think it's going to be a very even match at this point.
And speaking of decks, I see they're both on the Darkrai deck.
Yeah, we had a couple of other strong decks through the field, but the Darkrai deck really held out all the way through the tournament.
And they're actually fairly close together on their lists, right? I'm looking at them. It looks like there's a total of 15 cards difference.
Maybe that. Sometimes it's just preference. A lot of cards have similar effects, but they've chosen, by preference, but very similar decks.
So it'll come down to who's a better player, who's running harder this weekend?
At this point, these players are so good that oftentimes that is all that's different is a couple of good plays, and that's all skill.
So these lists are both on Darkrai and Mewtwo. EX in each case, right?
Right. The Pokemon EX are a relatively new reintroduction to the game. When the player knocks out a Pokemon EX, they get to draw 2 prize cards. But on the flip side, these Pokemon EX cards tend to be extremely powerful.
And they seem very, very popular this weekend. It seems like EX Pokemon are a feature of almost every single deck people are playing.
Absolutely. They also are basic Pokemon, so they're easy to play and very fast. So if you can get a good basic Pokemon EX out, you might be able to get early round knockouts and advance quickly.
So which Pokemon are they hoping for to start with as their active Pokemon? Is it Darkrai?
Darkrai is a good start, but actually both of these decks carry Smeargle, and Smeargle is not a Pokemon EX. It has an ability where it can look at your opponent's hand. You get to look at your opponent's hand, choose a supporting card there, and play it as it was your own. So you actually get an extra supporter card played per turn, a card that you can normally only play once. And that's a good way to start the game. You get to see a lot of cards. You get to turn over your hand very quickly, and you get to get a really fast start.
Right, and so both of these lists are on Professor Juniper, Professor Oak's New Theory, and N, and various numbers. So there's a lot of card draw involved with that ability.
Yeah, that's how the game's played right now. They want to see as many cards as they can, so they'll turn their hands over, through one of those methods as quickly as possible.
And it's not just seeing more cards either, right? Because with Professor Juniper discarding, they get to use the discard pile. Each of them's running copies of Dark Patch and copies of Junk Arm.
Exactly. Cards in your discard pile don't hurt you terribly bad because there are so many good ways to get cards back out of your discard pile, like the 2 that you just mentioned. There are some other cards that neither of these players are playing, but there are a lot of ways to get cards out of your discard pile.
So I think we see here Harrison did not have any basic Pokemon in his opener, so he had to go back for more.
Exactly. If you don't have any Pokemon in your first 7 cards, not only do you have to shuffle your hand back into your deck, but your opponent gets to draw 1 extra card to start the game with.
And that 1 card can be very important.
Absolutely. Especially when the decks are so similar, like slight advantages like that can make a big difference. Let's see if he gets 1 this time.
Does not look... Oh, looks like he has got a Darkrai EX in his hand, if I saw that right.
Darkrai EX is a popular card right now, not only because it can do a lot of damage, it can also hit your opponent's bench Pokemon, and it can help move your Pokemon around with its Dark Cloak ability, allowing a free retreat for any Pokemon that has darkness energy attached to it.
And it looks like Harrison was actually aiming towards the Darkrai decks being a big factor this weekend. Some of the choices in his list look like they're aimed towards beating other Darkrai decks.
It was a popular deck at the National Championships where Harrison played well. So I imagine that he knows exactly what to get into.
Right. So here we go.
3, 2, 1.
And the handshake, sportsmanship is still a very big thing this weekend.
They're very competitive, but they play with a lot of civility. It's nice.
So this is N is his supporter for the turn, which
Yeah,
is each player.
Shuffles their hand into their deck and then draws the number of cards equal to the number of price cards they have remaining. So at the beginning of the match, they both get 6 cards.
And then it's kind of a card that stays good as long as you're in the lead.
It's actually better if you are behind because you would still have more price cards on the board than your opponent. So you would draw 6, maybe they would draw only 3. But sometimes just those 3 cards can make a difference. So you'll see that played at pretty much any time.
Right. And how devastating is seeing it turn 1, kind of messing with the opponent's strategy?
I don't think it's actually all that tough. You know, the players like to know what they have in their hands, and this is a good way to, see fresh cards. Maybe, especially in Harrison's case, where he was short 1 card because he didn't draw a Pokemon in his first round. That leveled the playing field right there. He actually got a card back. He doesn't mind seeing N at that point.
Okay. So you see Prism Energy for Igor down there. He is running Prism Energy, and Harrison isn't.
Yeah, I think that's a preference. Igor made a big deal about playing Prism Energy. We'll see. He has a Terrakion in his deck where Prism Energy can come in handy for activating Darkrai EX's free retreat with the Dark Cloak ability. He can play Prism Energy onto Terrakion, call it a Dark Energy when he needs to retreat, call it a Fighting Energy when he needs to attack.
Which is some nice tech.
Absolutely, yeah. If you don't have that kind of diversity, then it's not as necessary.
So are you seeing, was that an Ultra Ball we saw on the top there?
I believe so, yeah. And you have to discard 2 cards, but then once you do, you can get any Pokemon you want out of your deck. And see, he went with Smeargle. We were talking about how he likes to get Smeargle out early so that he can use the Portrait ability.
Right. So all this shuffling is going on, for those of you who are not familiar with competitive play, is whenever a deck needs to be searched for a card, it needs to be randomized afterwards. And the shuffling is to make sure that neither player knows what the top card of the deck is, or, God forbid, there is some sort of shenanigans going on. The other player always gets an opportunity to shuffle further or cut the deck to make sure that each player has randomized it.
So they... the Smeargle was to play N, so they both shuffled and draw 6.
That's what it looks like, yeah. So we have, is that another Ultra Ball?
It appears so.
And he's getting rid of, is that
It's a
potion?
It's a plus power and
power.
a Darkrai EX that he's putting in to draw a different Pokemon. And that...
So what do we figure he's going for here?
I would imagine that he's also trying to get his Mewtwo out, but he actually goes with a Smeargle. And the nice thing about that is Smeargle has a free retreat, so he actually gets to use the Portrait. It's actually a Pokepower, not ability. He gets to use the Portrait Pokepower twice. So he is now, in effect, used the a supporter 3 times, while only playing 1 from his hand.
So he could see 21 cards a turn.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, the N's worth 6 cards, and then the Professor Oak's new theory.
6.
So yeah,
Juniper 7.
7. So he's seen a lot of cards already. With 54 cards in your hand, he's probably seen at least a third of the cards that have passed through his hand. It's not bad.
And this is all just to increase consistency, right? The players want to see as close to the same game as they can every time, because they think their strategy is the best. They want to keep using that strategy.
They might be looking, absolutely. They know how they want to play. They're also trying to get maybe the one card that they're really looking for. If they can turn over their hand, they'll finally get it.
Well, I do see some interesting 1 copies of cards here in their lists.
Mm-hmm.
I see from Harrison a Max Potion, which is something that I don't think I've seen in the other top 8 lists.
A couple of players have used the Max Potions. They're not bad for like when Smeargle takes damage. Max Potion gets rid of any damage that's on that Pokemon, but you have to discard all the energy that's onto it. It's easy to heal a guy like Smeargle who does not have any. You don't intend on putting any energy on it, so it heals it basically for free.
I'm going to answer a question really quick from online. Defy the Fallen asks, why are the TCG players putting paper over the back of their cards?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's actually not paper, they're plastic sleeve, and there's a couple reasons. One is that if the cards could get damaged during gameplay, this might make them marked. Just make sure they're not marked and make sure they're less likely to get damaged. And in addition, if you're playing cards that might get shuffled into the opponent's deck, something that goes to the middle of the field, this ensures that you don't end up with one of your Pokemon in your opponent's deck or the other way around.
Also, some regions have different card backs, and so to make sure, and players are allowed to mix and match from different regions. So for consistency of card backs, they put them all in sleeves so that all the cards look exactly the same.
Right. Is this the Japanese region has the pocket monsters back as
Exactly.
opposed to the Pokemon from the U.S.?
And so now they all look the same. You can play, if you had a handful of German cards and some Japanese cards and some English cards, they're all eligible.
So is that looks like a Professor Juniper from Igor?
Right. Has to discard the rest of his hand and then draw 7 cards, 7 fresh cards.
And again, the discarding isn't so bad for him because he can get access to those cards later on in the game a variety of ways.
Absolutely. You know, he actually discarded a dark patch there, but you know, you can also discard one of those darkness energy and get it with a different dark patch that you might have.
So we can kind of see his hand here. It looks like
That's Terrakion, and that's somebody that he really expects to be able to do some damage with.
And is a card that Harrison is not running, so it's kind of how he's addressing this mirror matchup.
Exactly. Terrakion is a good counter to Darkrai EX because Darkrai EX is weak to fighting type Pokemon.
Right. And that weakness means that it deals
double damage.
Twice as much damage. Some consideration from Harrison here, kind of running through his options.
Neither of them have any energy on their Pokemon, so they're unable to attack. This is all set up right now. They kind of have to bide their time. Mewtwo EX is an interesting Pokemon. It does more damage by how much it has on it, as well as its opponent, so the defending Pokemon. So neither are too excited about getting a lot of energy out there for fear that it'll be used against them.
They seem a little bit nervous in both cases. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked to both of them before the tournament started, and Igor in particular seemed like he was a little bit cautious coming into this round. I was a little surprised. Igor's got a lot of experience, including playing in Worlds. So
the prizes, though, for this first place here, when you win, it's $10,000 and a significant number of boxes, some factory sets.
You get, excuse me, I think, is it 36 booster packs?
Two boxes
72
for
booster
each
packs.
set for the next year.
And then you get a travel award to come to the 2013 World Championships.
So we see a ton of energy here. How did all that energy get on the Darkrai?
The Dark Patch getting the energy out of his discard pile, which allowed to play straight to him.
Was that 2 Dark Patches that turn?
It would appear so. I actually
with that many?
miscount on how many he already had on him.
We weren't on the count. We weren't on the field there on camera. We were looking at some players' faces. So that looks like it's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to say, so 10 for first place and then 7,500 for second place. So just by getting this far, they've already done very well. So perhaps some of that nervousness can be attributed to exhaustion as well.
And that's valuable. I think that right now these guys are playing just for the title, and then they'll be very happy with the award later on.
So that looks like an Eviolite put on the Terrakion, is that right?
Right. Eviolite reduces attack damage by 20 to that Pokemon, but it only works on basic Pokemon.
Right. And it works even on the bench, right? Which is important.
It works even on the bench.
Because Darkrai's attack deals 30 damage to a Pokemon on the bench.
Exactly, and Eviolite will slow that down considerably. Eviolite is common in these decks because so many of the Pokemon are basics. As a matter of fact, in these 2 decks, there are no Stage 1 or Stage 2 Pokemon.
So I've seen some of the discussion between whether it's better to go with a defensive strategy, something like Eviolite, or a more offensive strategy, something like Dark Claw. And I see people waver back and forth between an even split or all of one, all of the other. Do you think the format right now lends itself to a better defensive strategy?
I actually would think maybe that Dark Claw is a little bit more of an advantage because of the power of Darkrai EX. But in this particular set, neither player are playing Dark Claw. Both players are playing Eviolite.
And they're entirely on Eviolite, so maybe results would speak for themselves.
Absolutely. it's those kinds of small variations that we've seen. Even, we see a lot of Darkrai and Mewtwo, but it's those decisions that really make a difference as they progress.
Right. Some consideration. Some deep stares.
Yeah, they're definitely watching each other play as much as watching what they're doing themselves.
And this is mind games too, right? You want your opponent to think you're doing something other than what you're going to do.
These players are, I mean, at this point, they're both very methodical and know exactly what they're doing. It's hard to say that they're really affected by gamesmanship, but maybe there is some.
And then we see on Igor's bench, he's got a little six-sided die on his Pokemon. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the card game, tuned in for the video game, that represents how much damage is on that Pokemon. And they're in increments of 10. So there's 30 damage down there with the 3 on that six-sided die. Now there is 60 damage. That's Darkrai's attack, dealing 90 to the active Pokemon and 30 to a benched Pokemon. He chose to not hit the Terrakion because it would have been 20 less. So he's going to optimize damage overall rather than take out what will probably be a big threat for him.
Right, and also Mewtwo EX is a high HP Pokemon EX card, so getting as much damage onto him so that when he finally does get knocked out, he could draw 2 prize cards. It's a lot more valuable than the one Terrakion prize card he might earn.
Right. And particularly for something like this, where both players are playing a lot of the same cards, the extra cards from prize cards can be very, very important.
Absolutely. With so many Pokemon EX, and each time you knock one out, you get 2 prize cards. You may only have to knock out 3 Pokemon to win the game.
They're twice as hard to knock out, though.
They're twice as hard. They're especially guys like Mewtwo with 170 HP.
So seeing a mostly full bench on the other side here, but he's kind of focusing on leaving Darkrai in. So that looked like the standard 90 and 30, which ends up being 70 and 30 again because of the Eviolite.
Correct.
This is this, he's playing the Ultra Ball there? Or, no, he's playing a Junk Claw. Yeah, it looks like he played a Junk Claw to get...
A Junk Arm?
Oh, Junk Arm, rather.
Right, to get the plus power.
Double colorless on the Mewtwo.
Right, and double colorless plus the double colorless that was on the Mewtwo does 80 damage times 2 because Mewtwo is weak to Psychic, is 160, plus the plus power is 10 more, which is 170, and that knocks out Mewtwo. That was an excellent play.
So really quick, while the players are considering their play, I'd like to remind the listeners and viewers on the stream that we will have some trivia coming up after this match. We've got some extra kits of the swag here with the exclusive World Championships 2012 items in them. So, get ready to answer some trivia questions right after this match ends. Still considering his options?
Absolutely. And that was enough to knock out Mewtwo. Darkrai, that was...
Oh. So that's game, yeah.
That's game. He didn't draw the energy that he needed and conceded.
Darkrai, yeah, Darkrai is going to take out, next turn.
Right.
And then he'll have no active Pokemon. That's game.
That was game. Yeah, excuse me. He drew the energy. He didn't draw the Pokemon.
Right.
He needed to. Excuse me.
So just like the video games, this is best of